And when I woke up, I remember asking God, I said, why am I here? What am I doing? What is the reason for me doing this? And so I believe that today, that God has called me to preach a message about purpose and our identity. And I believe that so many of us here have thought about that and have asked ourselves that question. What am I doing? Why am I here? I think that's super important. And I believe that if you're here today, God is preparing something in you. I know many of us here have put our purpose in many different ways. I know we've put our purpose maybe in our money, right? I know some of us have strived to get the 401k and the big salary at Sunoco. Or maybe you're here and you strive to get the cool friends, right? Or maybe you strive to get on that sports team or that club. Or maybe you strive to be the best Christian you can be. So you put your Bible verse in your bio, in your Facebook bio, and you make sure everybody knows that you're a great Christian. Well, I want to let you know that you have a greater purpose here. That's outside of your church attendance. That's outside of how much money you make. That's outside of your friends and your family. God has a greater purpose for you, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to dive into Luke chapter 15, and we're going to go from 11 to 24, and I'm going to break it up, and we're just going to talk about this. Now, the cool thing about Luke is that Luke was a text written to, it's the gospel of Jesus, right? It's the gospel of Jesus' ministry. And here, Jesus is talking to the religious leaders of his time. And they're mad at him because he keeps hanging out with people who are sinners, people who are like prostitutes and tax collectors, the people of his day that society has kind of shunned away. The religious leaders were mad at him for this. And so he told them a few stories. And each story illustrates some of the same things. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So starting with verse 11, we're going to say, Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth and while living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine. There was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Like I was saying before, many of us have put our purpose and our identity in the world today. Your purpose is very simple. Your purpose is literally like what you were called to do and who you're called to be, who you were born to be. And so many of us have put our purpose in, like I said before, the money that we make, our friendships, our family. This young son here, in the story that Jesus gives, it's basically, he put his purpose and his identity outside of what his father had for him. He put it in the money that he made. He put it in the wealth that they had. Back in those days, a father could either give his inheritance to his kids after he died, or he could give it to him before he died. So what the younger son did was he asked for it, and he asked for it before he was ready. Now this father here basically represents God to us. Now you may say, why didn't God stop him? Why didn't the father stop him? Why didn't the father say, "No, son, stay with me"? But I truly believe that what Jesus is showing us here is that God loves us enough to tell us the right thing to do, but he also loves us enough to give us the free will to do what we want to do. So this son leaves, and he wastes his money in wild living, right? Later on we see that he spends money on prostitutes and party, and it destroyed him. It left him empty. And that's the big problem. Is that so many of us here have put our identity and our purpose in things that are not of God, and we wake up feeling empty. And we wake up and we continue to ask ourselves, why am I not fulfilled? Why do I still feel sad? Why do I still feel like there's something missing? Why do I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Well, I truly believe that God is going to show us how we can change it, how we can put on new glasses to see how the trajectory of our life should go. So if we continue to verse 17, he says, when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's my purpose? That's something that we always ask ourselves is, what am I doing? Like, how did I get here into this place? Like I said before, I believe that that's when God can do something in you. Because now you're becoming aware of your situation. You're becoming aware. And what this young son did was he began to become humble. See, before he was ready to party, he was ready to live wild. He believed he didn't need his father for anything else anymore. He believed that he didn't need nobody else. All he wanted was what he wanted his heart to have. But he began to humble himself and he said, how did I get here? What am I doing? And that's super important. That, I believe, is how we begin to change. His life feels over. His life feels probably incomplete. I mean, he went from wealthy living to eating with pigs. He found himself eating slop. When he used to have servants, people cooking his food for him. Now, I'm not saying that if you put your purpose in the world, that's what's going to happen to you, that you're going to become broke, that you're going to become unwealthy, because you may die a millionaire, you may die a billionaire, and that's fine and dandy. But your faith will become broken. And your faith will not flourish and grow. You will not grow. Many of us here today probably have grown up in church, probably grew up in a Christian household. But I know for a fact that there's so many of us here that are still hurting. There's so many of us here that are putting our identity in things that are not of God. And maybe you put your identity in things that's happening in your life. Maybe you put your identity in your trauma, in your church hurt. Maybe you put your identity in the parent that hurt you. And so it's even hard for you to imagine God as a good parent. And I get it. And I know that that's real. But your identity is not your trauma. Your identity is not your hurt. Your identity is something far greater. So his life feels over, and he asks himself that question. And if you've asked that question, I believe that God is beginning to prepare something in you. So if we continue in verse 18, it goes like this. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. If you're a parent here, and you've probably had a child leave, maybe they went off to college, or maybe they decided that it was better for them to part ways with your family, or maybe they did some things that you didn't want them to do when they left. I know, like this father here, many of you will have that same reaction when your child comes home. You will see them, you will hug them, you will love them, you will kiss them, you will ask, how are you doing, are you okay? And I believe that the son didn't expect this. The son probably thought he was going to be shunned from his father. The son probably felt that his father would just make him a servant. I mean, that's what he asked for, right? But his father embraced him. And I believe that if you're here today and you're hurting, that God is ready to embrace you. And so many times we look at God as this domineering parent. We look at God as the one who's going to spank us when we do some wrong things, right? But God is so much better than that. He's so much more. I mean, God is love. And he truly loves and embraces all of you. And he did it when he came into this world as a human being. He came in the form of Jesus. He lived a life that we can't live. He lived a perfect, sinless life. And he died a death that you and I deserve. And that act alone is how he embraced us. That's how God shows his love to us, because he died when we were still sinners. And the most beautiful thing about it is that although that act was hundreds of years ago, that God is still working today to show you his love. That if you woken up today and you're breathing, I promise you still have a purpose. I don't care if you are 4, I don't care if you're 40, I don't care if you're 85. I don't care about your economic status. I don't care if you have a disability, a different ability. You still have a purpose here today. God is not through with you until you deserve it. So he goes back to his father. He recognizes his lowliness. And that's what I'm talking about when I said humility. recognize the error of your ways, and when you go back to God, you don't just say, oh God, forgive me this time, maybe I'll do it again later, right? No. Humility is acknowledging where you are and asking God to change you, asking God to restore you. So many of us here have also probably been wrestling this idea of going to God in the first place. Maybe this is the first time you've even heard the Jesus story. And you're saying to yourself, like, should I really follow this Jesus guy? Maybe I'll do it next week. Maybe I'll do it next year. But I believe that the Son gave us a beautiful example of what it means to say yes to God. Because it says he thought about it. He thought about what he would say to his Father, and then he went and did it. He didn't deliberate, he didn't wait. And so many of us here are waiting for the right moment, but I believe if you're here today, this is the right moment for you. This is the right moment to say yes to Jesus and to walk into your true identity. But what is your identity, right? And why is this good? Why is this so important? You may say to yourself, why are you telling me all these things? Well, I'm revealing this last part. So starting back at 22, the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast to celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, so they began to celebrate. I just want to say that part one more time. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, so they began to celebrate. I hope y'all see in verse 22, it starts with but. Right? In verse 21, it ended with the son saying, I'm no longer worthy. I'm no longer worthy. And I promise, I know, I've done it. I've done it, but I've come to God after I've messed up and I've said, God, how can you take me back? I'm no longer worthy. And that but is super important. That but means that although you feel this way, God has something better for you. God has something different in mind. Because although we may treat people like that, we may shun people, God does not shun us. He is too good for that. His character will not allow him to shun us away because he loves us too much. Because he created us. So here's the big thing. There's two big things actually. In this story, Jesus is illustrating to us that God welcomes sinners into his kingdom. That's why Jesus was hanging out with prostitutes. That's why Jesus was hanging out with tax collectors, people who in society have shunned and pushed to the side, who said they are no longer worthy. Even if they're Jews, they're no longer worthy to be considered Jews. Jesus hung out with these people because he knew that God has a heart for sinners. God has a heart for the broken. And that he welcomes those into his kingdom. So that's one of the big ideas. The second big idea is that your purpose and identity, and this is what I've been trying to wrestle with all these past month really. And it's not just like, are you called to ministry? Like, you may be, but it starts somewhere else. I'm called to be a good husband, I'm called to be a good wife. Yeah, but it starts with something else. It starts with this really small thing, and it's that your purpose is to be a child of God. And that's it. Your purpose starts with being a child to God, a daughter or a son. This son realized the error of his ways and he went back to his father. And we may say, God, how can I come back to you? But it shows that God is embracing us, that he has compassion for us. And what does he do? He throws a party in heaven for us. He throws a party every time a person repents. Now, I know that we have this idea of sin, and all sin really is, like Jimmy always says, is missing the mark. And I remember when I first talked to him about it, we talked about a dartboard, right? We talked about like this idea of you're throwing darts at a dartboard and you just can't hit the bullseye. You just can't hit the mark. Well, maybe it's because you can't see. But I believe if you put on the lens and the glasses of being a child of God, to starting that intimate relationship with God, you'll begin to hit the bullseye. You'll begin to see. Because then you'll be able to see where your life really should be going. Then you'll be able to be a good husband and a good wife. Then you'll be able to work and not cuss them people out. I believe that when you put on those glasses, and that's when your life will truly go the way it should be, but you will never, I promise, you'll never be fulfilled until you begin to put on those glasses. Now you may say, well, Nigel, that sounds all good and dandy, but I'm fine. You know, this is the first American Jesus story. Maybe I'll do it again another time. Maybe I'll try next Sunday. I don't know, I'm not feeling it right now. I want to challenge you today to try. To try Jesus. Because what do you have to lose? In all seriousness, I tried Jesus myself. You know, I grew up in church. I grew up in a small Black Baptist church. And my family over there, they can testify that I was always doing something on Sunday morning, whether it was ushering, being on the choir, even doing some trustee work, counting money. I mean, I was doing this from a young age till I was like 18. And I had a lot of church isms in me. I could repeat what the pastor said on Sunday, but I couldn't live a life that Jesus called me to live. I couldn't live a life of generosity. I couldn't live a life of humility. I had anger issues. I had pornography issues. I had depression issues. I struggled so deeply. But in 2020, with the start of the pandemic and the most beautiful things, I couldn't even go to church. Couldn't even go to church. But I felt like God was calling out to me. And I began to analyze where I was at in my life. I began to analyze where I was feeling, what I was experiencing, and I began to ask God to take me back. God, will you accept me? Can I follow you? And so I encourage you today that if this is the first time you've heard the Jesus story, to try it. Because you have nothing to lose. Or you may be saying, well, Nigel, that's fine and dandy. I grew up in church. I'm good. I got my 401k. I got my family. That's my main focus. Like, I know I'm saved. I told my prayer to Jesus when I was 12 on a mission trip. That's cool. That's fine. And that may be true. I'm not saying that you're not a Christian. I'm not saying that you're not saved. But if you go to sleep at night and your thoughts are beating down your head, when people leave your house, when people leave you, you're questioning who you are. You're questioning what your identity is. I'm telling you today to put on the glasses of being a child of God, to being a son or a daughter. That's what's missing from your life. So I want to challenge you today to try it. To try Jesus. I mean, can't you imagine what your life will be like? What your family will be like? What your Christmas will be like? If you decide to put on those glasses, if you're able to see fully where your life should be going, if you're able to see how you ought to be a son or a daughter, I want to give y'all something practical, something that I did that I believe is super important, and it's so simple. And the reason for that is because I can give you a lot of oughts, right? I can tell you what you ought to do and what you should do. But if I never tell you how to do it, well, y'all probably gonna be messaging me on Facebook like, how do I do it? You know? You're probably never change. You probably will not put on those glasses. You know? You can tell the child how to ride a bike, but you got to teach them how. And so in the same way, I have something really practical for you, and it's a simple and effective prayer. It's something so small and simple, but I believe that it works. You don't need a lot to come to Jesus. Like, I didn't need a church. I didn't even need a altar. I just needed my bed on the floor, and I was on my knees. And so I want to ask that everybody stands up, if you can. I want you to extend your hands out. Because today, you are going to receive the blessing of being a son or a daughter of God. Today, you're going to receive the blessing of those new glasses. You're going to be able to see where your life should truly go. And I want y'all to repeat this prayer after me, okay? I want y'all to say, Jesus, I am ready, and I am willing to follow you. That's it. And when things get hard, when life gets hard, I want you to repeat that to yourself. Jesus, I'm ready, and I'm willing to follow you. Sometimes you gotta remind yourself. I want to say the final prayer just to pray over the whole audience. Because I believe that when you leave this auditorium today, that you're going to walk out of here differently, that the Holy Spirit is come inside of you, and that you're going to move differently, that you're going to be able to see life differently. Dear God, Father, thank you for every person that came in this room. Thank you for every person that's going to hear this message. Lord God, I pray that for every person who's been hurting here today, God, that healing take place. Lord God, please replace their mourning with joy. Replace their sorrow with happiness and with fulfillment, Lord God. Let the emptiness be filled by your presence, Lord God. If they're 80, if they're 40, if they're 15, Lord God, let their purpose be known as they are meant to be a child to you. And Lord, I pray that as they follow you, keep them encouraged, give them the strength to keep going. It's this I pray in Jesus' name.